Well, for more on this and the rest of the day's political issues, I'm joined here in the studio by our political panel, Shadow Minister for Justice David Feeney and Parliamentary Secretary Alan Tudge. Gentlemen, thanks both for your time today.
G'day, Tom. Good afternoon.
Alan Tudge, you're going to see that side a lot, aren't you? Ian McDonald speaking out. We've had in the last couple of days his forthright comments, shall we say, on the debt levy, the paid parental leave, apparently in the joint party room as well, talking about the fuel levy. Is he now essentially a renegade senator?
No, Ian has been a very good senator for many years now. We have a broad church in the Liberal Party and we debate the issues very thoroughly. We debate them respectfully, and Ian is entitled to his views, but at the end of the day we've got a policy platform that we are taking through the lower house and then to the Senate, and we'll be ensuring that they get through those two houses of Parliament. A
broad church is fine, but you're going to have to build a pool room for Ian McDonald, aren't you?
No, I don't think so. Listen, today he was obviously concerned about the debt levy. All of us are concerned about the debt levy. None of us want to increase taxes, particularly the Liberal Party, because we're the party of lower taxes. But we were left in a position where the budget is simply in a mess. We're paying $1 billion per annum just to pay the interest on the debt, and we have to get the budget back under control, and this is part of those suite of measures to do just that.
So just quickly, you don't see this as reaction, of course, to him being demoted from the front bench?
That's your commentary, not mine. Ian has always been very forthright in his views.
We want him on the show again soon, so it's a question.
He continues to put his views in a very forthright manner, but we have a suite of policies. Everybody knows what our policies are, and we're very determined to see them get through the Parliament.
I'm going to give you a shot, David Feeney. Should Labor perhaps be reaching out to Ian McDonald, talking to him about perhaps changes you'd like to make to what the government's putting out there? Is this an opportunity to build a bridge there to a disaffected senator? That's a question again, not commentary.
By all means. Well, listen, I think Ian McDonald in many ways is saying what so many people are thinking, and I'm sure even Tudge is thinking, and that is that the Liberal Party's policy platform is, of course, a nonsense. And the boast that everyone knows what the Liberal Party's policies are, well, of course we don't, because we just had a budget of broken promises. And in fact, the only promise that this government seems to be keeping is the one everyone wants to dump, including Ian McDonald, and that's the paid parental leave scheme. So we now, and Ian McDonald makes the point very eloquently, we have a government that is insisting on spending billions of dollars on a silver-plated, gold-plated parental leave system, while at the same time pulling money out of childcare. We have a remarkable set of twisted priorities, and this budget is setting new records for how long it dominates the political agenda, because it is just such a remarkable document.
I'll pick up on what you said about paid parental leave there. Tony Abbott, did he not make a pretty good point? The public service already has a generous paid parental leave scheme. This would mean, for example, people that work for small business and operate as a small business would be able to attract more people to their businesses because they would be on a par with that. Is that not a fair enough point? Or is this a perk of being in the public service? Everyone knows you get good paid parental leave. And
well, there are different parental leave systems in different parts of the economy and the workforce. Surely the point here is, firstly, it's such a generous, the world's most generous paid parental leave system being brought into being now makes an absolute lie of the so-called budget emergency. How is it that the country can afford such an extraordinarily generous scheme at this moment when the Liberals are desperately trying to convince us all that the budget is in crisis?
Alan Tudge, I'll let you respond, but I'd also like to know, do you think it would not be best for the government to wait until it's had its childcare review as well? We know how intertwined this is, and the biggest complaint from a lot of parents is not, well, we've got a small payment for our our paid maternity or paternity leave. It's how they can afford or even find childcare. Shouldn't you put the policy out in unison?
The two policies are complementary, but we can deal with them separately. The paid parental leave scheme we've taken to 2 elections now, and we want to make parental leave a workplace entitlement rather than being a welfare policy. And David is right. The people in his office will receive generous paid parental leave should they have a child,
and your office.
and in my office and in the public service. And in fact, they'll often get more benefits if they're higher income earners than what we're proposing here. In relation to childcare, yes, we are addressing this. We've got a productivity commission inquiry looking into it at the moment. And one of the key issues, and you identified it, Tom, is the sheer cost of childcare these days. And indeed, it went up 53% under Labor. 53% the prices of childcare went up under Labor, in part because of the framework which they introduced, which by definition put the prices up, and the Productivity Commission said that it would, and it has.
Those are noble sentiments, but even as we speak, you are now putting a cap on childcare so that families who earn even less than $41,000 are going to find that their support for childcare disappears. And as you say, surely there is enough evidence now to weigh the argument that this, instead of making this extraordinarily generous investment in paid parental leave, that the investment should be in childcare. You say you believe it's a workplace entitlement, but of course under your proposal it's being paid for by the state. It's not being paid for by the employer.
Well, it's not. It's being paid for by a levy on the top 3,000 companies, and what it means is that a small business will be able to offer a paid parental leave scheme similar to large businesses. So it really is a benefit to small businesses to be able to attract high-quality women to their workforce.
It's very hard to say it's not a benefit to small business, but it's also being paid for in part as well, isn't it? Not just from that levy from
at least 50% of it.
Well, most of it is being paid for by the levy on the top 3,000 companies. That was the agreement which we took to the election, the last 2 elections, and that's what we are indeed implementing, and it will start very soon.
We will move on. The Medicare co-payment. Interested in some comments this morning from Joe Hockey, the Treasurer. He vented his frustration about the lack of negotiation on this, so we'll try right now to thrash something out and see if it becomes binding. David Feeney, the Labor Party agreed on the debt levy because it only applies to high income earners. They said that's the reason they'll waive it through, even though they didn't agree with the policy.
Well, we had a view that we had bigger fights to fight.
Okay. Would you consider the same thing on the co-payment? Let's take that threshold of perhaps only those earning more than $100,000, wind back the payment to $5 a visit. I mean, there's got to be a point somewhere where you can say it's fair enough for a user pays system.
We let the debt levy go through the Senate on the grounds that while we opposed it, we have bigger fights to fight. We wanted to keep our powder dry for more important fights, and you've just talked about, and here it is. It is a very, very sacred trust for us that the Medicare.
But does it have to be sacred for someone earning $100,000, $150,000?
Universal healthcare. Universal healthcare is an absolute foundation stone for the Labor Party. We introduced it. We reintroduced it after Fraser knocked it off.
Do you know what, David?
And these good coalition folk have long dreamt of the day they can rip it up. They rip it up in increments.
All right,
they rip it up in increments.
I was hoping for agreement. I don't have much to take to in this negotiation.
But do you know what, David? Who was the first party to introduce a co-payment?
If you think it's such a fabulous thing, why didn't you tell the electorate about it before the election?
David, who was the first party?
Full of public policy today, but where was
Bob Hawke that introduced a co-payment. It was Andrew Lee, your Assistant Treasurer, who has argued for a co-payment. It was the Labor Party that introduced a co-payment on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme. So don't give us all of this holier-than-thou sort of rhetoric now, David.
Well, firstly,
because
Bob Hawke didn't introduce
Bob Hawke
but
he did. Bob
he
Hawke
did introduce it.
His job, but
and obviously Keating.
But it was the Labor Party which introduced it. If your Assistant Treasurer has argued for it, you introduced a co-payment. You introduced a co-payment on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme.
Why was it a secret?
So why are you so morally objecting to this co-payments on the Medicare system when you've introduced a co-payment on the PBS?
Universal healthcare. If you can't stomach my stand in supporting universal healthcare, then stomach my stand on the view that you should have taken this to the people.
You're being chief of the complaints desk today.
We're going to have to go to a break. We'll continue this vigorous debate after the break. Stay with us on Lunchtime Agenda.
Thank you.
Over 5 million industry super fund members benefit from employee and employer groups working together. It's a formula that's working.
Thousands of local clubs across Australia are working hard to reduce problem gambling even further. That's why your local club offers access to 24/7 counselling, bans betting with credit cards, has trained staff in responsible gambling. Plus, we're building better self-exclusion programs. And we'll keep working to find ways to help, because clubs are part of the solution. For more information, visit partofthesolution.com.au. Authorised by A-Ball Clubs Australia, Sydney.
The Queensland Government has the all-clear from Canberra to dredge and dump 3 million cubic metres of seabed in the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area. It's our reef. Join us to fight for it.
Authorised by Dirk Gorman, Brisbane.
You've worked hard this financial year, so enjoy a tax break at Officeworks. Relax in a tax-deductible office chair. Put your feet up on a tax-deductible desk and do a spot of shopping on a tax-deductible tablet. Then dunk a tax-deductible biscuit into a tax-deductible cup of tea while you enjoy the soothing sounds of tax-deductible ink hitting tax-deductible paper in a tax-deductible printer. In fact, every one of our 20,000 plus products could be tax-deductible. So take a tax break at Officeworks by June 30.
Want an everyday bank account that's completely fee-free and the flexibility to bank the way you want? Introducing Citibank Plus. Enjoy the flexibility of free banking, either at a Citibank branch or free access to one of the largest ATM networks in Australia, with many more around the world. Enjoy the ease of banking on the go with free mobile and tablet banking services. Enjoy the freedom of shopping with your new Visa debit card, in-store, online or overseas, completely fee-free. Plus the added convenience of PayWave. You can even make fee-free international money transfers. Plus, enjoy free wine every time you dine with the Citibank Dining Program. So rethink banking. Switch to Citibank Plus today.
Gavin? Oh, have you been up all night?
I'm looking for hotel deals. 30% discount with breakfast. There's 20% discount with the spa. 40%!
Why didn't you just go to Hotels Combined? They can bear hundreds of travel sites in seconds.
Hotels Combined! Hotels Combined.
Compare hundreds of sites to find the best price in seconds at hotelscombined.com.
Over 5 million industry superfund members benefit from employee and employer groups working together. It's a formula that's working.
You're watching Lunchtime Agenda, where I have with me in the studio David Feeney from Labor's front bench and, of course, Alan Tudge, a parliamentary secretary. Well, on December 15, 2010, an asylum seeker boat crashed on the rocky cliffs of Christmas Island. 50 people died, including 15 children. There were some daring rescues performed by customs and naval personnel, but the federal government is now being sued. Survivors of the family and also survivors, I should say, and family of the dead from what was Australia's worst civil maritime disaster in more than a century. Shine Lawyers has served a 34-page statement of claim alleging the government is liable for unspecified damages over the deaths, blaming the government for failing to have adequate search and rescue capacity on the island. Now, on this issue, gentlemen, we know that, well, David Feeney, I'll start with you. It was, of course, Labor in charge at the time. Was this a product of a system at breaking point because your policies in this area, in terms of boat arrivals, were failing?
What I note is that of the 41 who survived that terrible calamity, 40 of them were plucked from the ocean. Only one of them made it to shore themselves. And of those 40 who were plucked from the ocean, you'll of course remember that dreadful event. They were plucked from heaving oceans. And as you said in your opening remarks, those Navy and Customs personnel who conducted those rescues really put themselves in harm's way to conduct that rescue.
This case is not about those actions, is it? It's about the preparedness of what they had in terms of adequate boats?
Well, as I comprehend it, it's a case that says that those rescue services were inadequate. And I guess I'm making the point, without being much more familiar than that about the case, I'm really just making the point that what we saw is that boat unseaworthy in conditions that clearly it wasn't suited for, and just the remarkable efforts of those Navy and Customs personnel who, as I say, plucked 40 of the 41 survivors out of the ocean at great risk to themselves.
Alan Tudge, similar comments there from David Feeney that Scott Morrison said about this today. He was a bit stronger. He said it was shameful, this action, talking about, again, the brave action of these personnel, which I don't think anyone's doubting, but this case is talking about what equipment was on hand. I accept it wasn't the coalition in charge at the time, but if the government's going to be talking about this, it should be about the case at hand, shouldn't it?
Listen, we don't want to criticise the actions of the former governments in relation to this particular episode, because I completely agree with David here that the decisions that were made and the actions taken by the service personnel at the time were exemplary. They often put literally their lives on the line in order to pluck these people out of the water, as David suggested. And frankly, I just think it's very disappointing that this case is being made at all. The coroner investigated the deaths, and it came to some conclusions and certainly didn't
There
hold
was
the
some
government
criticism within that
responsible.
report of
But it said
that preparation,
quite
wasn't it?
rightly that the people smugglers are to blame.
Okay. When it comes to policy on this, David Feeney, a discussion today in caucus, Melissa Park, Anna Burke put up a motion for Labor to no longer support offshore processing. When it comes to Labor trying to put out this message, I suppose, to voters that they're now tougher on, if you like, asylum seeker boats, is this a bit of a mixed message to be sending out so soon after the election?
Well, no, I don't think it is. I think what we had in caucus today was a good debate, and I guess another demonstration of the fact that the Labor Party has diverse views, but we pull together after we make a decision. And this morning, after that strong debate and the ventilating of those views, we came to the conclusion that offshore processing still has a role to play, and that will be our policy going forward.
Is it the last debate for a while?
No, I can't imagine this debate disappearing anytime soon. Yeah. I think we acknowledge the point that there have been a number of key successes in this policy area, and they include the abolition of visa on arrival in Malaysia and in Indonesia for Iranians, and they include the PNG resettlement plan. These are the ingredients that have cut the flow of people smuggling to Australia, and all of that was discussed, as I say, in a very sober and serious debate this morning.
I can see you itching to jump in. We're going to move on to the next topic soon.
Sure.
20 seconds if you like, Alan Tudge.
I think that indicates that if Labor got back into power, there would again be enormous pressure on them to again unwind these successful border protection policies that the Coalition has had to put into place.
And Alan would say that, wouldn't he?
No comment. Now, alcohol is going to possibly be allowed back into some Queensland Indigenous communities. 17 out of the 19 in question have voted for either a reduction of restrictions or restrictions to go altogether. This all stems from a promise made by Campbell Newman, the Queensland Premier, during the election campaign, that he wanted to look at this. Now, in his words, he says, why shouldn't an Aboriginal man or woman after a long day at work be able to enjoy a beer like the rest of us? I'm interested in your thoughts, Alan Tudge. At the same time, of course, we've seen significant drops in the crime rate and domestic violence in particular in many of these communities. Where do you sit on this?
I've said this repeatedly right back from my maiden speech, that alcohol is a poison that runs through many of these Aboriginal communities, and we need to be taking every single possible action we can to limit the impact of that poison. And I would be very concerned if any decision was made which would lead to an increase in alcohol consumption.
That's a direct message to Campbell Newman as well?
That's my viewpoint, which I've held for a long time, going back in fact to working with Noel Pearson in Cape York, helping him on his alcohol management plans. It is the poison that runs through these places, and we don't want to encourage any further drinking in these places until they are much more stable than what they are today.
David Feeney, you're nodding in agreement?
Well, I'm pleasantly surprised, and I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, these alcohol management plans were developed by government in consultation with those communities.
Is it tough with the personal liberties side as well?
Well, what we see now is that those communities are safer, the violence rates are down. We saw in Parliament just last week the Northern Territory Police give evidence about the nexus between alcohol consumption and violence in these communities.
Who's to say
the
same outcomes wouldn't happen in King's Cross, though? I mean, to put that out there, would they not be safer and less crime?
But this isn't a hypothetical or theoretical discussion we're having. We can measure right now the results in these communities, and we can see that they're safer. We can see domestic violence has fallen. We can see that community life has been strengthened.
Okay, I want to end on talking about Iraq. We know that the US have said they're going to deploy troops. At this stage, it's to protect their assets, including the embassy, but they might have special forces troops on the ground. We did hear from the Iraqi ambassador not so long ago. Have a listen to what somebody had to say.
The Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has stated that the fight against terrorism is ongoing. He has also asked all countries to stand against terrorism because it will spread and affect all countries, if not eradicated and eliminated.
Alan Tudge, it's very much a moving situation. If the US ends up saying, we wouldn't mind a few of those, in Barack Obama's words, Aussies in the foxhole, is it a call that we should answer?
Well, our main focus at the moment is to look after Australian citizens in Iraq and look after our interests there. We understand there's 90 to 100 Australians still in Iraq, and we've made a call out to them to get out of Iraq if you can right now.
Right, but that being said, is it something that should be countered?
Well, the United States has put in 200 troops at the moment to look after its personnel in Iraq. That's all they are doing at this stage. We're keeping a very close eye on it. We're negotiating and discussing with the United States almost daily. And as the Foreign Minister said this morning, that providing things like special forces would be an absolute last resort.
David Feeney?
Well, I noticed that the President Obama has sent 275 troops to protect the embassy and various assets, but it seems at this point to have ruled out sending US ground troops. I think that's a pretty significant scene setter. And I think for Australia the issue would of course be what role are we being asked to play and how does it serve the Australian national interest.
Very quickly, what about the Greens' push to make sending troops there a responsibility of the Parliament, not the leader?
We have a long-standing policy in the Labor Party to not support that measure, and I've spoken on the subject several times.
And I'd agree with David on this, that it's ultimately the decision of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet.
Happy to keep that responsibility there?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, well, David Feeney, Alan Tudge, I know you've got to get off to your various question times. Enjoy that battle. I hope you can stay in the chamber. Always a good start, but thank you very much for your
Thanks, Tom.
time on Lunchtime Agenda today. We'll speak to you next time.
Thanks, Tom. See you soon.